Welcome to Void Frame Gallery, revealing the unseen, frame by frame. In 1947, New York faced one of the last major smallpox outbreaks in the U.S. As fear spread through the city, even Broadway showgirls lined up to get vaccinated. This image captures not vanity, but bravery, women in costume, protecting lives on and off the stage. Over 6 million people were vaccinated in just a few weeks, stopping the virus cold. It's a moment where glamour met grit and public health made history. In 1922, during the height of Prohibition, a woman discreetly pours alcohol from a hollowed-out cane into a teacup. The law may have banned liquor, but it couldn't ban ingenuity. Speakeasies, secret flasks, and clever disguises became everyday tools in the battle between morality and freedom. This photo captures the quiet rebellion of ordinary citizens who refused to give up their rituals. Behind every sip was a statement: you can ban the bottle, but not the spirit. In 1930s Brooklyn, as the Great Depression gripped America, a different kind of gang roamed the streets, armed with tricycles and unshakable joy. These kids weren't fighting for turf, but for a little piece of childhood in a world full of hardship. Their laughter echoed through alleyways lined with struggle and survival. To them, the sidewalk was a racetrack, a battlefield, and a dream all rolled into one. This photo reminds us that even in the darkest times, children found a way to create light. September 11, 2001, moments after the South Tower collapsed, survivors from the 87th floor of the North Tower emerged into a world buried in silence and ash. Their bodies were coated in dust, but their eyes held the shock of the unthinkable. They had walked through fire, darkness, and debris guided only by instinct and the will to live. Every breath they took outside was a miracle. This image freezes not just survival, but the haunting cost of one of the darkest days in American history. In 1940 rural Maryland, survival meant thinking ahead. This mother and daughter spent the summer harvesting, cooking, and canning, preparing for the long winter months. In jars filled with peaches, tomatoes, and beans, they sealed not just food, but love and endurance. The world outside was uncertain, with war overseas and economic scars still healing. But in this quiet kitchen, strength was passed down one jar at a time. In 1981, the streets of Kabul told a different story than the one we know today. Young men and women, side by side, walked freely as students, hopeful, ambitious, and part of a modernizing Afghanistan. Education was a symbol of progress, and co-ed schools were not uncommon. But behind this normalcy, political tension brewed beneath the surface. This photo captures a moment of peace, just before the storm of decades-long conflict would change everything. In 1913 Amsterdam, a fish shop proudly displays its finest halibuts, giants pulled from the cold depths of the North Sea. These weren't just fish, they were proof of craftsmanship, commerce, and tradition passed down through generations. Behind the windows, families depended on every sale to weather the uncertain tides of pre-war Europe. The shop stood as a symbol of daily resilience, serving fresh catch to a hungry city. This frozen moment captures a simpler time, just before the world changed forever. In the 1970s, living rooms across America transformed into sales floors, hosted mostly by housewives chasing empowerment through plastic lids and airtight promises. A Tupperware party wasn't just about food containers. It was about friendship, financial freedom, and feminine identity. These gatherings became safe spaces for women to talk business at a time when society often told them to stay quiet. Behind every cheerful toast and pastel bowl was a quiet revolution. This wasn't just a party, it was a movement sealed with a burp. In the 1970s, Two Native American women graced the cover of an Arizona magazine, a quiet but powerful image of identity and pride. At a time when indigenous voices were often silenced, their presence on a mainstream platform spoke volumes. Dressed in traditional attire, they carried generations of culture, resilience, and beauty. This wasn't just a cover, it was a moment of representation long overdue. And for many, it became a symbol of survival in a world that too often tried to erase them. In 1971 Belgium, a man lifts a glass of beer, golden, rich, and steeped in centuries of tradition. This simple act, captured in one quiet moment, reflects an entire culture built around craftsmanship, conversation, and community. Belgian beer wasn't just a drink, it was history in a glass, brewed by monks, perfected by generations. Behind every sip was a legacy of resistance, celebration, and identity. And in that still moment, the world slowed down for taste, tradition, and time. In 1950, before the polio vaccine changed history, children lay trapped inside iron lungs, giant machines that breathed for them. Each rhythmic hiss was the sound of survival. These weren't hospital beds. They were mechanical lifelines in a time of fear and uncertainty. Families watched helplessly as paralysis struck without warning. And in that steel cylinder, childhood paused, waiting for science to catch up. In the final chaotic days of the Vietnam War, the skies above Saigon filled with desperate hope. In April 1975, President Gerald Ford launched Operation Baby Lift, a mission to evacuate thousands of Vietnamese orphans before the city fell. Amid gunfire and uncertainty, over 3,000 children were airlifted to safety, many for adoption abroad. Some were truly orphaned. Others had families who made unimaginable sacrifices. In 1930s Sydney, a simple bowl of soup meant survival. These children, lined up quietly with empty hands, faced the harsh grip of the Great Depression. Families had lost jobs, homes, and hope, but not dignity. Free meals like this offered more than food. They were lifelines during an era of scarcity. This moment captures not just hunger, but resilience passed from one generation to the next. In 1972, a young woman stepped off a plane in London, not just chasing a crown, but carrying quiet ambition and rising American charm. Linda Carter had come for the Miss World contest, unaware she would soon become an icon far beyond beauty pageants. With poise, grace, and something fierce behind her smile, she walked into a world still shifting with feminism and fame. The Royal Albert Hall awaited, but destiny had bigger stages in store. This wasn't just a contestant's arrival, it was Wonder Woman in the making. In the 1950s, hospital walls held strange contradictions. This photo shows a patient casually buying cigarettes from his own hospital bed. Back then, smoking wasn't just socially accepted, it was encouraged, even in places of healing. Doctors lit up during rounds, and cigarette ads claimed health benefits. This haunting image reminds us how far medical understanding has come, and how close we once lived to danger, without ever realizing it. In the 1950 streets of Opawa, New Zealand, baby strollers dangled from the front of buses like forgotten luggage. It was a time of post-war practicality, where necessity often trumped safety. With crowded buses and limited space, parents had no choice but to trust that metal hooks and bumpy roads wouldn't betray them. The image feels unthinkable now, but for many, it was simply part of the daily routine. This haunting slice of history reminds us how far public safety and parenting has come. In 1955, a father and son stood at a shop window, separated by glass, but connected by dreams. The father, weathered from post-war years, chose a gift not just of play, but of hope. The pedal car symbolized freedom, adventure, and a piece of the American dream. For the boy, it was joy. For the father, a quiet victory. In a single purchase, a generation passed down more than metal and wheels. It passed down a better tomorrow. In 1940s Texas, where heat and hospitality collided, drive-in service came with a Western twist. Young men in cowboy boots and short shorts weren't just serving food, they were serving charm. It was a spectacle of style, swagger, and Southern pride. For many, it was more than a meal. It was a taste of post-war joy and American flair. In a time of shifting roles and cultural change, even a milkshake could come with a side of performance. In 1957, deep in the hills of Frascati, Italy, a woman stomps grapes with the rhythm of tradition echoing beneath her feet. This wasn't just winemaking, it was heritage passed down through generations. With each press, she honored centuries of labor, celebration, and connection to the land. The air was thick with laughter, crushed fruit, and stories told under the sun. In this single moment, ancient rituals met the modern world, and nothing was lost in translation. Paris, 1930. A city caught between two wars, yet love still found a way. This wedding wasn't just a union of hearts, but a quiet act of hope in uncertain times. The streets may have been recovering from the past, but this couple walked forward, hand in hand. Their smiles were defiant, their vows unshaken. In a fragile world, this was a moment of peace dressed in white. In 1918, at the Pilkington Glass Factory in Lancashire, a woman carries more than just a sheet of glass. She carries the weight of industry and war. Each roll was hot, heavy, and dangerously fragile, yet this was the daily rhythm of labor. Britain had just emerged from the First World War, and rebuilding the nation meant forging strength from fire. Factories like this one didn't just make glass, they shaped the future through sweat and risk. This worker, frozen in time, reflects the silent resilience that held a country together. Long before Google or Wikipedia, students in the 1960s faced a different kind of homework challenge. The library was their search engine, and index cards were their tabs. Surrounded by books and silence, they dug through encyclopedias and reference shelves with patience and curiosity. Every answer had to be earned, not just clicked. It was an era where knowledge came slowly, but stayed longer. In the quiet chaos of departure, Private Robert Moy leans from a train window to kiss his wife goodbye. It's 1950, America is heading into another war, this time in Korea. This image, frozen in time, captures both the strength and heartbreak of those left behind. One kiss, filled with love, fear, and the unknown. For many couples, it would be the last goodbye they'd ever share. It's 1948, and inside a small dorm room at Indiana University, a young woman carves out her own space in a world still catching up with her dreams. The room is modest but filled with character. Books stacked, a vanity mirror glowing softly. Education for women was no longer a privilege, but still not entirely a given. Each test passed and paper written was a quiet act of defiance and determination. Here, behind closed doors, history was studying for a future it was never promised. In the 1930s, first-class travel was more than just a seat. It was a symbol of class and privilege. Upholstered chairs, silver service, and quiet conversation painted a picture of elegance on rails. While the world faced the Great Depression, these cabins offered a fleeting escape for society's upper crust. Outside the window, uncertainty rolled by. Inside, it was all about refinement and calm. This wasn't just transportation, it was a moving portrait of a divided world. In 1932 Paris, invention met imagination with the cyclomer, an amphibious bicycle built to glide on both land and water. This futuristic-looking contraption promised freedom like never before, carrying up to 120 pounds as it floated across rivers and rolled through streets. It symbolized the bold optimism of a time still recovering from war and economic struggle. Though it never became mainstream, the cyclomer captured the spirit of human curiosity and innovation. A bike that dared to dream beyond the shore. In 1956, beneath the romantic charm of Venice, workers took on a monumental task, cleaning its ancient canals. Draining the water revealed centuries of debris, forgotten relics, and the quiet decay of a living city. It was a rare moment when Venice's hidden foundations were laid bare to the sun. These workers weren't just cleaning, they were preserving history, brick by brick. What tourists see as beauty, others once saw as duty. In 1964, Sean Connery stood on the set of Goldfinger. Becoming more than just a man, he became a legend. With his sharp tuxedo, cold stare, and effortless charm, he redefined what it meant to be James Bond. Behind the scenes, the production was ambitious, blending danger with style in a way the world had never seen. Connery carried the weight of global expectations and delivered it with a smirk. Goldfinger didn't just mark a film, it marked an era of cool that still echoes today. In 1907 Texas, education began in a single room where one teacher guided every grade at once. With chalkboards, wooden desks, and oil lamps, this small space shaped the minds of a growing nation. Children walked for miles, rain or shine, for the chance to learn. Each day was filled with reading, arithmetic, and strict discipline. This one-room schoolhouse was more than a building. It was the beating heart of a rural community's hope. In post-Soviet Lithuania, 1992, these young women stood at the edge of a new world. Just a year after independence, Western influences were rushing in, and so were new dreams. A model casting call wasn't just about fashion, it was about possibility, freedom, and reinvention. For many, it was the first taste of something beyond decades of restriction. This moment captured the hopes of a generation reaching for something they'd never thought possible. Meet Violet Jessup, nicknamed Miss Unsinkable. She survived the deadly 1912 sinking of the Titanic, and just 4 years later, escaped the sinking of the Britannic during World War I. But what's even more incredible, she was also aboard the Olympic in 1911 when it collided with a British warship and walked away unharmed. Through 3 disasters on 3 sister ships, Violet lived to tell the tale. In 1846, a quiet revolution began, not with a speech, but with a camera. This is the first ever photograph of the White House, taken by John Plum Jr., a pioneering photographer and visionary. Captured during a time when America was still young and uncertain, this image shows a moment of national identity taking shape. The White House looks distant, almost ghostly, more memory than monument. Yet this single image helped define what would become the most recognizable home in the world. In 1980s Japan, a rebel culture was born, loud, proud, and impossible to ignore. These were the Yankee, teenage outlaws who styled themselves after 1950s American greasers. With pompadours tall as pride and leather jackets full of attitude, they turned city streets into stages. But behind the hair and swagger was a deep need to break free from pressure and conformity. They weren't just copying, they were rewriting rebellion in their own language. In the gray silence of the Soviet Union, 1980, winter made its quiet entrance. This photograph, taken by Ed Kakamov, captures the first snow, not just on the ground, but in a moment of stillness. Children pause, adults hurry, but the snow falls the same on everyone. It softens the harshness of Soviet life, if only for a while. A brief breath of beauty in a world ruled by routine. In 1958, safety was more of a hope than a guarantee. This photo shows a baby seat with no straps, no anchors, only a mother's outstretched arm standing between her child and disaster. It was a time when love replaced regulation, and instinct filled in for engineering. But crashes didn't care about good intentions. This image is a quiet reminder of how far we've come, and what it once meant to trust the road. In the sweetness of post-war America, joy came by the handful. This 1950s photo captures a simple yet powerful ritual. Children picking out candy, eyes wide with wonder. Behind the glass jars and striped awnings lived a world untouched by bills, war, or worry. It was more than sugar. It was a taste of freedom, of innocence wrapped in wax paper. A quiet moment of happiness, preserved in time. In 1966, danger didn't always come from the streets. It lurked beneath polished floors and spinning steps. At Gimbel's department store in New Jersey, women were warned to remove their high heels before stepping onto the escalator. One wrong move could mean a twisted ankle, or worse, a trapped shoe. It was a strange clash between fashion and modern convenience. And it told a quiet truth. Progress always came with fine print. In the bustling factories of 1940s America, precision met progress one bottle at a time. This image captures a quality control worker inspecting freshly labeled Pepsi-Cola bottles, fresh from an automated line that symbolized a new industrial age. With war raging overseas, the home front turned to innovation. Machines took over, but human eyes still mattered most. Each label had to be perfect, every bottle uniform. Because even in mass production, pride in the product never took a break. In 1955, one American family stood out, not for wealth or fame, but for numbers. The Harrisons of Jonesboro, Tennessee, had 13 sons, earning them the title of the largest all-male family in the country. Lined up in matching shirts and shy grins, they became a symbol of post-war family pride and small-town strength. Each boy with his own dream, but all tied by the same last name and front porch. In a world changing fast, the Harrisons reminded America of something timeless: family. In 1912, a man stood before the camera, not as a hero, but as a survivor. This is Ejner Mikkelsen, the Danish explorer who endured 2.5 years stranded in Greenland's frozen wilderness. He watched his crew vanish, buried a friend, and lived off seal meat in a self-built hut. Through endless nights and brutal cold, he refused to give up. This photo captures not adventure, but the quiet, unshakable will to live. In 1900, far from the noise of cities, a shepherd stood still for history. Captured by photographer Auguste Bobone, this Portuguese shepherd represents a way of life shaped by silence, wind, and the rhythm of the land. With worn clothes and steady eyes, he carried generations of tradition in every step. There were no headlines, no glory, only duty, day after day. This image is a tribute to the unseen guardians of the countryside. In 1965, luxury wasn't just about leather seats. It was about living the future on 4 wheels. This rare image shows the Mercedes Fidelity unit, a high-class setup with a TV, radio, phone, and mini-fridge, all inside a car. It was bold, excessive, and decades ahead of its time. Only the elite could afford this rolling command center, where comfort met Cold War-era tech dreams. More than a car, it was a statement of power, status, and what the future might look like. In a quiet room in 1938, science met hope and voltage. This photo shows a young woman placing her arms and legs into 4 water baths wired with electric current, a treatment believed to boost blood circulation. It was part therapy, part experiment, during an age when electricity promised miracles. Doctors swore by it. Patients trusted it, even when no one fully understood the risks. This moment captures a forgotten chapter of medicine, where healing and danger shared the same switch. Long before smartphones and filters, beauty knew where to find the lens. This is Ava Gardner, Hollywood icon, capturing her own reflection in 1947, a quiet, elegant moment of self-expression. In an age ruled by studio control, this photo feels personal, almost rebellious. It wasn't for fans or fame, it was for herself. A rare glimpse behind the glamour, where the star became her own storyteller. In the shadow of war and ration lines, joy still found a way to echo through the streets of 1940s New York. This photo captures children turning cracked sidewalks into playgrounds, with nothing but chalk, imagination, and each other. Their world was small, just alleys, stoops, and curbs, but it felt endless. They laughed under laundry lines and raced past tenement walls, untouched by the weight their parents carried. This was childhood during hard times, raw, free, and unforgettable. In 1931, even the smallest hands were called to work. This photo shows a 4-year-old girl helping her family dig potatoes, her tiny frame bent under the weight of survival. It was the height of the Great Depression, when childhood often came second to survival. There were no toys here, only tools, dirt, and duty. This image is not just about poverty. It's about strength learned far too young. London, 1972. A city pulsing with fashion, freedom, and the sound of change. Here stands British model Jenny Clare, posing beside her iconic Mini Cooper, a symbol of youth, style, and rebellion. The Mini wasn't just a car, it was a cultural statement, compact but bold, just like the era itself. In a time when women were claiming more space in society, this image radiates confidence and independence. It's not just a photo, it's the spirit of the 70s, frozen in chrome and attitude. In the smoky glow of 1940s nightlife, Misty Ayers lit up the stage with elegance and fire. A burlesque dancer and actress, she moved with confidence in a world that often demanded silence from women. Every step, every glance was performance, but also defiance. She wasn't just entertainment, she was power wrapped in velvet and spotlight. This photo captures more than beauty. It captures a woman owning her story on her own terms. In the golden light of the 1920s, freedom came in waves and sea breeze. This photo captures a young woman in Deauville, France, enjoying a quiet beach day, hair loose, smile unguarded. It was the post-war era, when women were shedding corsets, rules, and expectations. Deauville wasn't just a beach, it was a symbol of a new kind of woman, bold, modern, and unafraid. In this simple moment, she wasn't posing for history, but she became part of it. In 1955, before the internet and smartphones, connection relied on human hands. This photo shows switchboard operators, mostly women, plugging lines and bridging voices across cities and states. They worked long hours with perfect posture, sharp focus, and barely a pause to breathe. Behind every hello was their quiet labor, unseen but essential. They weren't just operators, they were the heartbeat of a nation learning to speak across distance. In 1945, as World War II neared its end, another kind of battle was fought on factory floors. This photo shows workers at Emerson carefully assembling radios, piece by piece, by steady hands and tired eyes. These radios carried news, hope, and last words across oceans and into living rooms. Every circuit wired was a silent act of resilience, a link in a global chain of connection. They weren't just building radios, they were helping the world hold together. In 1884, before she lit New York's sky, Lady Liberty stood proudly over Paris, not yet a symbol, but a promise in bronze. This photo captures the moment she towered above rooftops, fully assembled for the first time. She wasn't just a gift, she was a shared dream of freedom between two nations. Soon, she would be taken apart, piece by piece, and shipped across the Atlantic. But for a brief moment, Liberty looked out over France, waiting for her place in history. In 1906, before castles, cartoons, or dreams come true, there was just a boy and his sister. This photo shows young Walt Disney standing beside his little sister Ruth, long before the world knew his name. They grew up in a modest home, surrounded by hardship, but also by imagination. Walt would go on to build empires of wonder, but here, he was simply a brother. A quiet moment from the childhood of a man who would later shape millions. Harlem, 1925. In the shadows of segregation and struggle, joy still found its way into the streets. These young girls, captured after school, played as if the world hadn't yet told them their limits. Their laughter echoed against the brownstones, an act of quiet defiance in a time of inequality. This photo is more than a moment. It's a reminder that even in hardship, childhood refuses to be silenced. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and step deeper into the archive for more rare and historical photos.